Hey guys, it's Spidey again. So this is going to be our second episode in the Pals podcast, and we're going to be going over chaotic good. And this time around, we really want to focus on the nature of chaotic good, the same way we did with lawful goodness. And we're really going to define some stuff. We're going to be learning things ourselves and really considering new ideas. We're going to be talking about some pretty wacky characters. Get yourselves ready for that. And also, please let us know again what we can improve on. It's been such a great thing to get to do this, to keep ourselves busy, and to really engage each other in intellectual conversation. And so, we hope that you enjoy this next episode of the Pals podcast on chaotic goodness. I am Spidey, and we're back again. Hi, lad.
Hello, Spidey.
Okay, so today, Shine will not be joining us. He is too busy running around killing animals in a video game. But
You
we
could
are,
say he's too chaotic.
yes, today we will be discussing chaotic good. And this is going to be interesting because what we're going to come to the conclusion on may not seem right, but bear with us for this one. So we're going to just start off, lad, describe the chaotic good person.
All right. So, they don't tend to lean on any god or system for guidance. They do what works for them, and it doesn't really mean they don't really have to be atheists or anything. You can still be a cooperative citizen and follow laws while being chaotic. They just tend not to believe laws are the correct way to go.
Okay.
That's any chaotic person, really, not just chaotic good. They don't try as hard as lawful people to adhere to any guidelines. They tend not to. Their main thing for a chaotic person is they don't like anything tying them down, and they like freedom more than, following what they like rules and stuff.
Right.
One thing a chaotic good person would do, if they wanted to help more impoverished kinds of people, they would spend more time in the slums directly helping by giving out food and sparing change for a bum. They would definitely do more of that kind of things other than working in a soup kitchen or working for a charity organization.
Right.
Because
they have a more see something, do something mentality.
Yes, exactly.
Which is why last time we actually discussed that that Spider-Man, by nature of how he operates, is obviously a lawfully good person at heart, but he operates
lawful good intentions, chaotic
good execution.
Yes.
Right. And so, really, a chaotically good person is not necessarily a bad thing for the world. It's just that a chaotic good person, you can meet these kinds of people. These kinds of people actually tend to usually be Buddhist in nature. They do tend to have a sort of very free mentality. The problem is that they can't necessarily invent a good reason behind what they do in a way. Okay, so the chaotically good person believes that what they do is good, right? And in a sense, it definitely is. The problem for them, where they start encountering a crisis, is that it's very hard, apart from a lawfully good attitude, to really develop a reason behind why you want to do something good.
Yes.
And that's not to say that the chaotic good approach is not a good one. It's to say that the approach, while good, lacks true defined motive. And so, where the chaotic good person and the lawfully good person butt heads is on the subject of why you do good. Who gives you the reasoning? Why do you do it? Why do you do what you do? And so that's really something that not just the chaotic good person will struggle with, but it's something that everyone at any point in their life will hit a roadblock on. They're going to run into a scenario where they need to ask the question of why they want to do this thing that they're doing. If I keep stuttering, it's actually because I am working on the poster for
For this
this
video.
video, and this is okay. I chose this specified character because I made him have a very chaotic good approach to his mission, and on top of that, his fighting style and look just kind of scream chaos. So, like, anyway, point is, what we're really trying to get across here is that a chaotically good person can do great things, not just good things, great things, because they have a mentality of simply seeing something and doing something. And that kind of mentality is good because it enables you as a person to go out of your way to help someone. The thing is, the lawfully good person's approach to doing good may sometimes inhibit them because they might start thinking about, like, well, is this right within the confines of the law? And while that
It's right
person
for
is
me, but it's not right for everyone's, or it's not like technically good, although it's what I believe would be good.
right, and the problem with that is that while the lawfully good person is, deciding on who it's right for and what should be done, the chaotically good person has already made the decision. And so the
Yes,
thing is,
they follow
I
more on instinct.
right. I think that there has to be not necessarily, I don't think that one mentality is necessarily better than the other. I think that they have to
Yeah,
work in sync. I think that people should have a lawfully good attitude, meaning that they should know why they're doing what they're doing. Um,
alright.
but simultaneously, that they shouldn't necessarily have to consistently think about why they're doing it. Like, they should be able to see that someone is in need or that someone is struggling and just act because they need help. Like, I mean, a great example would actually be something that happened quite recently. I don't know, Lad, did you hear about the story where there's a guy who was actually looting? I think this Chicago that this happened.
What?
But anyway, he was looting and a cop stopped him, and the cop put his knee on his throat and
Yes,
basically
George
killed
Floyd.
him. Yeah. And so so for example, a chaotically good person would go out of their way to get the cop off the guy, right?
Yes, they
Regard
definitely would.
Right. And so, but the lawfully good person would, like, kind of have to think about it first for a second
Yes.
because they know, like, I'm breaking the
They would
law.
think more about, like, is the cop in the right? Because I don't know what happened before he started arresting this guy.
Exactly.
You don't really
And
know.
they're not able to think about what's happening in the moment
Yes.
because
Yeah,
they're
they don't
too
know
busy.
if it's the right thing to do or not. But a
Right.
chaotic person would see something being done wrong. They don't care about what's happened before or the history behind it, you know?
They just
They think,
want it
hey,
to
that
stop.
doesn't look appropriate. Yeah.
Exactly. And so I
I'm gonna go
think,
off on a little tiny bit of a tangent real quick. I
go
literally
ahead.
never care about politics at all, period. But I was like seeing the stuff that happens online and like it's actually got my attention. I'm not neutral on this subject at the moment. I am very, very
What
stressed,
so
depressed, and furious about it.
what subject are we talking about in
No, like
particular?
all of the not even specifically the initial thing with George, just like all of the protesters and how like the cops are taking advantage of their power and using it
Oh
for
yeah.
evil.
And I think that actually that's indicative of what we're talking about here. So really what we want to cover here is, okay, this is actually perfect because I've been looking into a lot of psychology behind superheroes and stuff, and also trying to tackle these things from the perspective of the Bible. And really what I've been kind of figuring out is that they're a good thing. It's good to have them. But okay, for example, so we're going to go off on another tangent, a superhero tangent, because these are
All right,
awesome.
yeah,
But all right, so
that's
Batman,
gonna be a
right?
common thing in this.
Oh yeah, for sure. You guys are gonna have to deal with that. Okay,
I
so
had Batman written down too. I wanted to see if you thought the same thing.
Batman.
Yeah, for chaotic
Yeah,
good.
yeah. So okay, think about it like this: when Batman begins his mission, is he breaking the law? Of course he is, because he is by definition operating outside of the law, and
Yes.
so he's obviously going to be breaking that law. He's going to be really treading water that he shouldn't be. but
Yeah.
the law is already so corrupt that he can't really work from within it. He didn't have a choice. It's not like he could go up to the GCPD and ask, can I work like as Batman with you guys? Because then there's a very good chance that he could be corrupted, because everyone that he's working with is corrupted. And so the point of the Batman is to utilize the chaotic good approach, the approach that you simply see something and do something to prevent it. But simultaneously, the reason that Batman prevents life from being lost is because he doesn't want what happened to him to happen to anyone else. And that's a lawfully good attitude. That's an empathetic attitude. But his chaotic good approach is what makes him a hero. And so Batman's dramatic example shakes Gothamites out of apathy. It makes them understand that you have a responsibility, a duty to your fellow man or woman to fixate on the issue. And if you are powerful, the way that Bruce Wayne is powerful, where he has many resources and technology, then you have a responsibility to utilize that in the good of others. It's why Bruce Wayne is consistently working on philanthropic projects. And so really, this thing that's happening with the cops where they heavily abuse their power, it's a shame, because it's actually okay, it's the opposite.
They're being lawful evil. It's like lawful evil entirely.
Yeah, it is lawful evil, but like some of their execution is literally the exact opposite of what we're
talking about. It's just neutral evil.
Right. So
lawful evil is the exact opposite of chaotic evil. Because a good example is just like cops are like, they're not technically breaking the law by arresting protesters, but they are at the same time being evil by going against their rights.
Right. And so like really the problem that like it would be one thing if the protesters were bringing guns to their protests and like threatening the lives of other civilians. Then
but
it's
if they're
like
just preaching love to a cop and like, hey, I love you. I don't know why you guys are responding with violence. I don't want anyone to respond with violence, and then a cop comes up to him and arrests him.
If they're saying like, hey guys, look, we're going through a tough time and we need resources, and then like you straight up arrest them.
Yeah.
Now we have a problem, because you're penalizing someone for saying I need help. Like
All right, I don't think we should talk about cops anymore in this, because this is not a political series, but we could do another individual video maybe tonight on the topic of
so I mean, let us know, guys, down in the comments section, if we even have one of those. If you guys
I have a lot of stuff I could say about the politics of today, because it's the first time I actually care about it.
If you guys have anything you want to say on politics, or you think that we should say something about what's happening, let us know. Because honestly, politics are not what we want to focus on. We don't think that politics are the root problem of what happens in the world. But
that's why I almost always stand on neutrality, but this is the first time I've seen something that actually strikes me personally.
Yeah, no. And I think that's because we look at things from a moral perspective. And the thing is, what's really wrong with the world is often...
I don't like looking at things from a moral perspective. I like to take in everything and realize, hey, I shouldn't really have any input on this anyway.
Yeah, but I mean, like, okay, really what we're discussing a lot of the time is trying to look at what is wrong, like, why is this happening? And then see how it's projected in the world. And oftentimes, the wrongdoings that are in the heart are projected through the political spectrum. And it's an unfortunate fact that a lot of what's wrong with human beings gets projected in that way, because it impacts a lot of people. And I mean a lot. Like, in Sierra Leone, there was a time when it was basically impossible for you to go outside without being shot.
Just like anyone at all? Or was it specifically targeting someone?
Anyone at all. You just couldn't go outside. It wasn't allowed. And so, like, that halted food trade and, like, gatherings.
Why were they not allowed to go outside?
Because their king was a bit of a fool. And and it's sad because the king is obviously very fearful. He has a mentality that he needs to stay in control, right? And that's something that not just kings deal with. That's something that human beings in general deal with. We all have days where we feel like, man, dude, I'm not in control. I really want to be in control.
Yeah.
And like
Yeah.
the problem is that that king in particular, he projects that fear onto his people. And that's a problem because now it means that like you can't go to the supermarket to get the food you need. You guys are going to die in your house.
Like, are they allowed to stay on their properties but be outside, or literally cannot leave
No,
their doors?
you cannot leave the house. You need to be in. You will literally be shot with a high caliber round from a sniper.
Well, then who's going outside to shoot people?
The people on roofs.
Wait. Like, they have, like, soldiers stationed?
Yeah. No, it's literally martial law. And martial law is only declared legal in a state of emergency.
Or are we in a state of emergency right now?
Technically. So martial law from a certain standpoint is allowed in the United States to a degree because if you see like a crowd of 50 people getting together, you know, like, okay, wait, you guys are like jeopardizing the safety of a lot of other people right now. Like not just people within your immediate 50 crowd vicinity. You're jeopardizing the lives of other people that you might go home to see or that they have to go to work to see. And on top of that, you have to remember that essential work is still, you know, for one, essential and is going on. And so, like, if that gets corrupted, then a lot of people are going to get sick and a lot more are going to die.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, while martial law is harsh, I think it's important to remember that not every martial law soldier or policeman is like a jerk at heart.
Yeah.
They're not. Okay. See, like
we are going on to a tangent.
Yeah.
But that also reminded me of another thing. But I don't want to talk about it because we are supposed to be talking about Batman or something.
Yeah. But okay, so I'll rope this back around. From a chaotically good perspective, a martial law enforcement doesn't really work because it kind of disables the person from being if you're a martial law soldier, it disables you from being able to just see something and do something because you have a specific code that you need to operate by specifically.
And that is exactly the anti of chaotic good people or chaotic anyone's.
Right. And the thing is, that's not necessarily a bad thing because what they're doing is ultimately good for the safety of other people. Trying to keep you from getting sick is good. Or, you know, like from people, you know, starting that's a good thing. But the problem is that it neutralizes a very core aspect of good behavior. And honestly, from a biblical perspective, you know, humans are supposed to look at the strife that their fellow humans are in and think like, I want to help that person. You know, like I'm going to go over there right now and help them. And it might get you into trouble. It really might, you know, like honestly, if you see in some states, you know, law enforcement can completely just beat their you know, whoever they deem as a criminal. In Colombia, actually, they call policemen thieves in uniform. And it's because they use their power for evil. They use their power to just straight up rob people. And so if you saw a cop like beating up an old woman or something and you ran over there and you kicked that guy's face in, I mean,
that is definitely chaotic good.
Yeah, that might get you in trouble for sure, but you stopped him from doing something evil. And you put your existence on the line. Because now you might go to jail or something, but that person is going to live. And so the point
that's what matters more to it.
Exactly. And so like I think what we're ultimately trying to say here is that we want to have a lawfully good mindset. We want to know why we're doing what we're doing. But we also really want to focus on just doing good when we have the opportunity presents itself. Because there is a lawfully good approach to doing good, which oftentimes, while a good thing, can simultaneously lead to really, really bad outcome.
Yes.
Like,
Yeah.
okay, some people will say like, well, we want to go around the world and like, we want to bring people resources and stuff that they need. But then like, if those people say, oh no, we don't want you here and we don't need you here, then it's like, oh wait, but we think you do, and so like we're gonna tell you what you need. Now we have a problem because now you're like literally trying to you're saying, how dare you reject my act of kindness, like,
Mhm.
and that's not
It
that's that's not good.
doesn't work that way.
Yeah, like if someone says no, then it's just like, okay, sure, like you just move on. And really, I think that with chaotic good,
I'm just gonna read something real fast. It's notes for this.
okay,
You can keep talking though.
okay. Actually, okay. So what I really wanted to do though is really talk about the nature of this new character that I'm trying to write, which I
All right.
think I'm going to start. I'm going to be putting up the story on my Patreon page so that everyone can laugh at it. But anyway, the story is about, I made the main character like a flat character because I really wanted to create a story where the entertainment comes from watching how he effectively bounces off the rest of the cast. Simultaneously, he has a very chaotically good approach to his mission where he's going into a city that's been under threat and war and siege for a long time, like 100 years, and he's going in to help. And so he helps the first person that he meets. He helps someone who's outrunning the police that are literally just trying to beat her up and take her food that she needs to feed her family. And he basically curb stomps those guys. And his entire mission is chaotic good up until a point, because there is a point at which everyone around him kind of starts rallying and they tell him like, you can lead us to effectively get these guys out of here, so that we can have good lives. And he does effectively lead the charge, but the way that I'm writing the story is that I wanted it to be a little more natural, because it is a good thing that he's ridding the land of these oppressors. That's a good thing. His approach, though, while it did start off at chaotic good, became lawful good, because now it is part of the mission. It's literally the thing that he's doing. So he is, in a sense, no longer simply going out of his way. The thing that he was doing to go out of his way has literally become the mission. I know that's kind of confusing.
Yeah.
By the end of the story, I have him make another sort of sacrificial decision in which he finds out that the people that he's been protecting kind of, they lied to him, because they told him that at the beginning of the war, it was the opposing side that struck first. When in actuality, what happened was that they were the ones who told the opposing side to just get lost, and they attacked them. And so they retaliated because the opposing side never actually had any ill intentions in the first place. So when the main character finds out about that, when he finds out that they lied to him, he simply forgives them and he gives them a way to get out of the city. But then he decides that he's going to stay behind, and the war that has been going on, for like over 100 years, he tells the general of the opposing side that he's going to fight 100 years worth of the reinforcements that he kept sending to pay off the debt that the people owe.
That's amazing.
And I know that sounds like,
How is he? Well, he's a superhero, so you can actually do that, right?
right, and his swords are this.
Those are like whips.
Exactly. Do you know what those things control? They control
What do they control?
They control the prospect of heat.
That is the worst weapon ever.
No, they literally control like the aspect of heat.
No,
Meaning that
I'm saying like that weapon would be the worst one to be against you.
yeah, like okay, guys, we have a missile. Oh wait, it stopped working. Why? Because his sword absorbed the energy. Oh, that's fair. We're gonna die. Like, and so he decides to do that because he went from
So it can absorb the heat from a weapon, but then also use that heat.
exactly. And so, and his entire armor is like that. And so he decides to stay behind for however long it takes to fight 100 years worth of things, because he's going out of his own way, really. Like to do what was in his interest would have been to just let them face the punishment that they should have gotten, because they deserved it.
Yeah.
But he chooses to actually take the punishment that they deserve, because he's the only one that can and will, so that they can leave and go live the kind of life that he grew up living. And so I haven't finished writing it, but it will be nice
sure?
when I finish.
How is he chaotic good, and like what makes him different from lawful good? Because I know you said like he changes.
So chaotic good is the simply, see something, do something mentality.
Yeah.
And he has a reason for why he wants to do it. He's Christian, so he knows why he wants to be chaotically good, but he doesn't have a lawfully good approach, meaning he does not think about what he's doing. He knows what is right, and he just does it. He doesn't need to sit there and like, oh, wait. No. So, and so that mentality is really what bolsters all of his actions. The point at which it becomes lawful good is when he really begins to consider, am I going to be a general? Like, am I going to, lead these people into a fight? And he chooses ultimately to do that. He does ultimately make the decision to become a general and thereby enforce good.
Yeah.
That's where he becomes lawfully good.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Where his approach becomes lawfully good. But it goes back to being chaotic good when he decides, okay, see, the lawfully good thing would actually be to let them pay for what they did wrong. I am perfectly within my right to do that. But then he thinks, but if I do that, then I'm not a very effective. I can't, I'm not embodying the principle that I've built my life upon. And the right thing to do would be to go out of my own way again and lay down my life so everyone here can live. And so now he decides that now that he can see the kind of situation that they're in again, the kind of situation that they deserve to be in, he's going to do something again. He's going to drop from the position of simply doing lawful good, of his execution being that way. And he's going to simply go forward and do something about their current situation. Like, because in the instant where his approach became lawfully good, he then annihilated his ability to simply see something and do something. Because he's a general now. He has something he has to do.
He has like more responsibilities for many other people, so he cannot just.
But as soon as the safety of his entire people is jeopardized, as a general, you never sacrifice the general for what a smaller person can do. But if the general is the only one that can do it, then you have to sacrifice them. And so from the beginning, his approach is chaotically good. When he becomes a general, his approach is lawfully good. And at the end, it goes back to being chaotically good, because now he's in a position where he's going to say, I'm going to stop being their general, and I'm just going to save them.
That's definitely chaotic good.
Yeah. So he decides that instead of, trying to, he's going to let them live. He's going to send them off back to where he came from, where they can go and live good lives with their families that they don't deserve to live.
Because they like fuck. I don't want to swear.
They lied to him. They started the war, and they were on the losing end, and then he came, and he put them back on the winning end. And then he decides, look, okay, the lawfully good thing to do would be to just let you guys get slaughtered. You deserve that.
Yeah.
But from a merciful and restorative standpoint, I will take the punishment, and you guys will go and live my life. And so, like, that's actually what inspired me to make I don't know if you saw this one, lad, the drawing, the speed drawing I did of Aaron, the embodiment of ashes.
I think I did, but show me if you still have it with you.
Yeah, I do actually. It's literally right behind the computer.
I don't remember if I watched that one.
So that one was actually pretty. That one was not recent. That one came out a while back, but
I probably have seen it.
Yeah, but like anyway, Aaron, he is effectively giving up what's left of his humanity for his mission. He's not gonna. So that means that for however long it takes him to effectively destroy 100 years worth of soldiers, Aaron's not going to get to have the kind of life where he can have friends and family and children and a wife and, like, you know, his best friends are about to become his swords. And so, like, he is going to do that for however long it takes, because he knows that it's the right thing to do. And he's going out of his own way here. Like, he has a mother and father that are, like, waiting for him to come home. And he's got a life. But instead of that, he actually gives the people the directions for how to get back to where he lived, so they can start lives there on that land. And
instead of him going back to it.
Exactly. And he's going to stay in their broken city where they should die and be slaughtered, so that he can just pay the price for what they should be doing.
Even though he isn't the one that screwed everything up.
Exactly. And, like, I think that a chaotically good approach is what enables a person to do that. I think that that is a good mentality, because it means that you will throw yourself into danger and save someone else's existence, even if it means that the one life that it jeopardizes is your own. And that's a great approach. And so,
after the intermission, I have something very good to say that's a lot like what you were just talking about.
Oh, sure. So we can definitely do that after the intermission, but I think we still have some time left on this one.
3 more minutes?
We do? That's how?
Yeah.
Really? What?
3 minutes.
Where's that? Where's that being read right now?
In the top right corner.
What? How?
You don't see the timer going down. The clock is on.
I actually do not. Like, I don't see it anywhere. Okay, so
we're 2 minutes now.
Okay, so then we can just stop this session here. We'll take a quick break, and then we'll come back. So stay tuned for that.
Hasta luego.
Okay, and we're back from our break. So you guys probably don't know this because I edit it out of the video, but our breaks usually take some time because we want time to mentally recharge. That, and we spent a large amount of time working on some extra designs for the channel and whatnot. So in this second half, we will be going further in depth with a lot of the ideas that we covered, and we may even be going over a lot of really interesting characters that we didn't
Yep.
think we would be covering in this
Yes.
series.
We were just having
Uh,
regular conversations about like nostalgia and we're like, oh my god, my mind is blown how
Squidward,
so
SpongeBob,
yes,
and
we are
so
so lucky we've remembered this, but also we are doomed that we have to talk about these characters.
yeah. So honestly, regardless of whether or not we covered them in that last conversation we just had, we were destined to come to this at some point. So get yourselves ready, folks, because we are
Yes.
about to speak of the legend of SpongeBob.
Eventually, we will be getting to that. So, a quick recap though. Basically, we talked about how chaotic people specifically, they lean more towards not. Oh my god, how did I mess this up immediately? We literally said this like 5 seconds ago. They value freedom over commitment. They do what they think is right immediately, like chaotic good people. They don't think about their things and they don't like lean on any orders to like judge their things. They feel like whatever they believe is right must be done. And they go more off of instinct. I'm pretty sure I've said that a million times though.
Yeah.
So chaotic good are those who do what they think is good. They tend to go against the law. An outlaw with a heart of gold is like a pretty good example for this. They commonly disagree with the rules set out by society, going against them to do what they believe to be correct. They do the right thing even when it presents a problem for themselves and sometimes for others. They don't care about rules, but they usually care about the people. They stand against bureaucracy that crushes others. So a pretty good thing like chaotic good people normally tend to do is screw the rules, I'm doing what's right. That's a pretty common guideline for what chaotic good is. Spidey, you got anything else to add?
I mean, okay, when we talk about disobeying the rules, it's important to realize that we don't mean that rules are not good. That's really not what we're saying. In fact, we established in our last episode that part of what makes lawful good so good is that it's an inherent design for how human beings should be.
Yes.
Human beings by nature seek order. They seek a natural way, sorry, not a natural way, but they seek a way to make what is unnatural, that is lawfulness, straightfulness, the norm, meaning that as things exist in our world, they're actually not orderly. Order is a very human concept that nothing in the animal kingdom obeys, that's for sure.
Mm-hmm.
And so really, when we talk about chaotic goodness, we're not trying to say, hey, everyone, you should ultimately just do whatever you think is right in your own eyes. That's definitely not what we're trying to say with this. That's part of why I really wanted to talk about the nature of having a lawfully good ideology, but having a chaotically good approach to following that ideology. Like rather than sitting around and debating with oneself about what is right or wrong, simply accomplishing the task before you is much more important.
Perspective is a dangerous tool.
Exactly. And so really with that, we wanted to lead in to some character studies. So,
first,
okay.
I'm going to start off with a boring character before we get into the ones we've teased at you about. So, Robin Hood. This shouldn't take too long. He's a very good example of a chaotic good person. He stole from the rich and gave to the poor, obviously. But he also focused more on, like, thugs and stuff who were actively hurting people. Because, from one perspective, stealing specifically from the rich, that's a pretty bad thing to do. Because he targeted rich people just because they had money. Maybe, I don't know the full story, because there's probably tons of different renditions of it. They could have been just, like, horrible people in general. But that's still, like, that's a biased opinion and a pretty bad perspective. But also, he did steal from, like, thugs and other, like, generally accepted to be bad people. And so in his mind, yes, it is definitely a good thing to do. And he definitely did not follow the law because the law was broken in that world.
Right. And so really that's kind of Robin Hood is a very similar character to how the way that we discussed him is very similar to how we discussed Batman, where the law is already corrupted. There isn't necessarily room for legal and lawful goodness. That's not to say that Robin Hood could not form his own ideology. It's to say that the system from which he could have worked in was already so badly corrupted that it
Mhm.
basically became impossible to work from within the law. Now,
Mhm.
that isn't, however, to say that he's entirely right, though.
Mhm.
Now, here's the problem. From a biblical standpoint, doing what is chaotically good is definitely a good thing,
Mhm.
because it allows an individual to simply act with the ideology that, they can't turn their back on another person in need, knowing that Jesus himself, God did not turn his back on them when they were in their hour of greatest need. And so that ideology enables a person to really go out of their way to help others, regardless of how or why it inconveniences them. And that's important. Um, Now, the problem with a lot of people and chaotic good is that chaotic good in Robin Hood's case does mean that he should immediately help the poor. That's a good thing. And the fact that
Yes.
he wanted to do that is intrinsically linked to his character. In more
Yes, but
recent
respectively based, it was a pretty bad thing to do.
right, because looking at more recent renditions of his character, since there are like different versions of this character released every like
Many different
5
stories.
years,
Yes.
it's usually linked to the fact that, like, maybe his parents were robbed or something when he was a kid by the rich, and so he has this
Mhm.
opinion of rich people that's like they all need to know what it's like to
Mhm.
lose something, and the poor people are the ones that I identify with. So I'm
Mhm.
going to,
Yeah.
whilst giving to the poor, steal from the rich.
Mhm.
And you can understand and sympathize with him. You can have compassion for that character. The problem, though, is that you just can't, say, oh, right, that's totally justified. No,
Yeah.
because those rich people, they also have families, they also have
Yeah.
needs. And
Mhm.
I think that part of that comes
It's not
from
fair to
the
judge someone just because they have more resources than you.
right. Because really what it comes down to is the ability to utilize the power you're given in life in order to sustain the weak. The strong are inherently designed by God to actually do what is good by the weak. It's a process. And so really what it comes down to is the chaotically good person being able to recognize when their help is not helpful. Because in one sense, in the immediate sense, right, Robin Hood's help is helpful to the poor. Do you know who it's not helpful to in the long run?
Mm.
Literally everyone else.
Yeah.
And so, because when you think about it from a realistic perspective, he's robbing the rich. Yes.
Mhm.
What do the rich sustain? They sustain the economy. They sustain
Mhm.
the way of life. And
Yeah.
so the fact that Robin Hood is robbing them is all fine and dandy until you consider, oh wait, crap.
Those are people too.
Yeah, like and so immediately as an anti-heroish approach, you kind of feel like, oh yeah, he's doing the right thing. He is doing something that maybe the rest of us feel like we could be doing, but we can't do because it's illegal. And so he
Yeah.
provides the audience a sense of satisfaction. The problem with that satisfaction is that it's not realistic.
Yeah.
And I mean, honestly, okay, so now that we've kind of discussed Robin Hood, we got
I
to
have two more
discuss.
characters I want to go on, and then you can take SpongeBob.
Right.
Alright?
So let's discuss a couple more that, like him, are kind of flawed, but we can see where they're coming
Yeah.
from and kind of get it.
So, Steven Universe. I have a very specific episode because I rewatched it recently that I want to use. So, the episode where Pearl gave him the mirror that had the gem stuck inside of it. Um, they had kept this mirror imprisoned for years, and they didn't know if it was dangerous or not, so they didn't bother to fix it or find anything else out about it. Steven Universe found out that this mirror had a sentient person inside of it, so he set it free without thinking what the consequences could have been. He was like, hey, that's not good. This thing is in prison. This sounds like a torturous life, and I can tell that it is hurt. I'm going to let it free because I have the ability to do that. And then he didn't think about the consequences later. He just thought that, hey, this is the correct thing to do. And there was a lot of backlash for what he did, but he did not regret it at all.
Right. Okay. Okay. So yeah, like that's a really good example. Like Lad, that was great, because honestly, that perfectly encapsulates what can go wrong with that ideology.
Mhm.
And it's not that we're trying to say again that, like, this ideology is inherently flawed. We're trying to say that in the wrong hands, like lawful good, it can go bad. It's easy with lawful good to misinterpret what a law means. It's easy for a person to twist the law to their favor.
Yes.
And in the same way, it's easy for a person with perfectly good intentions to become misguided. Like,
Yeah.
Steven
Especially
Universe, right? Yeah, exactly. Steven Universe in that instance does not consider that there might be a reason that this thing is trapped.
Yeah.
I mean, even if we took into account, let's just pretend that whatever we're talking about here was not evil, right?
I mean, it wasn't evil. It just ended up because it was something. It was lapis lazuli. She was trapped in there for so long that she went crazy. She was so hurt that these other people knew she was in there and didn't do anything about it. So she ended up stealing the entire ocean trying to get back home, and it started a huge fight. And there were so many other problems with this girl, but they ended up becoming friends.
Exactly. And so the end result is good, meaning that what Steven did was ultimately good. But a lot of people could have been killed. A lot of people could have gotten hurt. And well, a lot of people
ended up suffering immediately after he released this girl.
Right.
Like
and
his
so
entire town didn't have water.
Really what we have to consider about the chaotically good approach is whether or not it is appropriate to act. And the problem with the chaotically good approach is that it usually, not always, but usually only considers what is immediately good and not what is ultimately good. Like, okay, in that particular instance, Lapis Lazuli was not actually evil. She was simply damaged. And the thing is, when we consider that, we start thinking, well, then of course Steven would let her out. Okay, sure, but what happened? You know, before
she stole all of the water.
Right, before we got her under control, everyone almost died. So we need to consider, like, dude, maybe next time don't open the secret prism of power that was contained for some reason. Like, you always have to consider that. And that's why lawfully
But the thing is, the gems weren't telling him anything about it because they felt guilty, because they knew he was in prison, and they thought that if they didn't tell him, he wouldn't do anything about it. So if they had just told him, he would have taken a more secure approach to it.
Right. And so really what it's going to come down to is ultimately, that's another thing that we kind of want to discuss, not in this video, but in another one. We would like to discuss the impact of environment on man. Like, meaning that, okay, a lot of the time people will only see half the picture because they think, well, environment is entirely responsible. And then other people will say, no, it's just the person. Like, you know, it's not the environment's fault at all. It's just the person. And the problem with either one is that they ultimately miss the point. But in that particular instance, it's not even that, you know, Steven was necessarily wrong to do what he did. It's that no one was telling him exactly what the right thing to do was. Because, see, the right thing to do in that situation was obviously to let her free. The wrong thing to do was to let her free and then expect Steven to just know what to do right off the bat. Like,
they should have let her out in a secure place and like figured stuff out instead of just, you know, letting her run away.
And if they told Steven that something was wrong, then he could have mentally prepared himself for it. Not having to come to the conclusion that his friends are lying to him about a very crucial detail that not only
about
reveals
his entire history.
Right. It not only reveals something about himself and about the nature of this foreign object, but simultaneously that helps him understand that they too are flawed. And like, that's important. That's important for children to understand about their superiors. So, okay, now that we've like covered that in depth, let's
So the next one, I think I've talked about him before in the Lawful Good episode, is Gellert Grindelwald. He I've already heard this, but yes. His goal was to expose the wizarding community and oppress the muggles, or the non-magical people, because he believed that the magical people were superior, which they are, because they literally have magic. But because the magical community had oppressed itself in fear of persecution from the non-magicals, he just wanted the wizards to rise to power again. But he went about it in a very aggressive way. He ended up killing people indiscriminately, pretty much, anyone that crossed his path. And all in the name of good, though. His quote was, "for the greater good." But he went across it in a very, very dangerous way.
Yeah.
Yeah, and J.K. Rowling had compared him to Hitler. Because,
I would say
he was German, and just, like, a bunch of the stuff he did, like, J.K. Rowling intended to, like, compare him to Hitler.
Right, okay. So I think, yeah, that's a good example of someone who obviously, chaotically, is going around trying to do
They
good.
have good intentions.
Right. What's the
but
problem,
to everyone
though?
else, it's bad.
Exactly. And in a way, that really is bad. See, because I don't think that it's wrong to deny that there are people in this world that are better. Like, it just is the case. There are people that are stronger, that have more resources. We have to admit that. Or else we come to a crossroads and we think that everyone should have the same exact thing. And that leads into another political thing we can talk about. But basically speaking, it is hard to really talk about a subject like that because you think, like, well, aren't all men created equal? And it's not that they aren't. The problem is that not everyone is given the same
opportunities.
Yeah, they're not all given exactly the same thing. We all have to work with what we're given in this life. And unfortunately, we're not all given $1 million. We're not all given that crazy amount of funding and parenting that we could all have.
We're not all born with magical abilities.
Right. And the problem is that he thinks that that makes them the superior being and that that gives them a greater right to live. That's where the problem comes in.
Yes.
See, the problem
but also
is,
you have to realize, so their side, the wizarding world, had been persecuted. The Salem witch trials are a thing in this universe. They did happen. And so that's when the wizarding community went into hiding. They've literally covered up every magical creature that could pose as a threat to the muggles. They hide all of their communities and all of their schools, and the wizarding population is so small. There's only about 200,000 in the entire world. I don't remember the specific number, but it's tiny because they live in fear of muggles, and so many of them have been killed, and they can't live normal lives because of the non-magical community.
Right. And so it's not even that. See, the thing is, in their rage, in their fury, in their anger at the injustice that was done to them, it makes sense. You can sympathize with why they're angry and why Grindelwald in particular, why he is upset. It makes sense. The problem is that he's not actually solving the root issue. He thinks he is, but in reality, he's kind of turning into the thing that he hates. He's becoming the discriminator.
He's becoming the oppressor, yeah.
Right. And honestly, that's the tragic irony of not just that particular story, but human history in general. Whenever the oppressed gain power, they often become oppressors themselves. And it's sad because really, when you think about it, it means that human beings on a fundamental level are incapable almost of utilizing power in a good way. And so it's really heartbreaking.
It's really being proven with what's going on right now with like the whole police stuff as well.
Oh yeah, and see, honestly,
we said we weren't going to talk about that too much, though.
Yeah, okay, yeah, but like honestly, it's a common thing throughout history that mankind, when he's given the ability, the power to do such good, he misuses that power on a fundamental level. He uses it for his own personal gain. He uses it just to mock God, to mock people, to put people at disadvantages. He constantly misuses the power. And the question quickly becomes, how do we approach having that kind of power without being corrupted by it? Because absolute power corrupts absolutely.
Krusty Krab pizza?
Now, I think that what Ladd is hinting at is that it's time to move on to another chaotically good character, but one that has the right idea. So we're going to talk SpongeBob. Now,
listen to Pineapple Under the Sea. Sing it, come on.
I can't. I can't now. I think I could have done it. I think I could have done it if I wasn't like already on the verge of dying of laughter. But
if nautical nonsense be something you wish, then drop on the deck and flop like a fish. SpongeBob SquarePants, SpongeBob SquarePants, SpongeBob SquarePants.
Okay. No, yeah, all right. So we grew up watching SpongeBob a lot, right? And as we continued forward in life, we found ourselves sort of identifying with a lot more
and bonding over.
Yeah, we just kind of really. It's not that SpongeBob became a character that we didn't like; it's that he became more like a person that we were striving to be, and the rest of the cast were like where we already were. Because SpongeBob is like that character that inadvertently he just finds a way to be happy about something. And it's not necessarily that the thing that's happening to him that's bad is making him happy.
He tends to be oblivious to most things. Oh, I'm sure you guys know this.
Right. But he always attempts to find something to bring him joy, which is an interesting and hopeful aspect to his character. Yeah. Because it really enables him to act as the flat character that sort of bounces off effectively with the rest of the cast.
Plus, he's a sponge, so he's pretty good at that.
Exactly. Now, I think that part of so we were discussing in our break a very important episode of SpongeBob. And by the way, this episode, not just in terms of story, but in terms of animation quality, is really well done because it's actually hand drawn by the animators. Now, the episode is called The Pizza Delivery, and as you most likely well know, if you don't know what this is, I'm sorry, you probably don't live in the earth. You don't live.
You probably live in Patrick's house.
Yeah.
Under a rock.
You must that must be where you live, because Patrick would have no idea about the world that he lived. He actually doesn't know.
SpongeBob's been around since '99.
Yeah. Now, I think that okay, in this episode, they go on an epic journey to deliver a pizza. And the entire way they run into obstacles.
I feel like chaotic is a better explanation for this journey.
Yeah, they keep on running into obstacles and just like tornadoes and monsters. They get stranded in the middle of nowhere. And like you start thinking, why is SpongeBob being so positive about all of this? Because Squidward's perspective is really the right one. It's the rational one. It makes sense to be completely out of your mind about this thing, because this isn't something that happens every day. And so
if a regular pizza man had encountered a tornado on the road, he would turn around and go home.
Exactly. But SpongeBob believes that he has a duty to fulfill. And as a chaotically good character, he wants to consistently go out of his way, out of his own convenience. You know, he doesn't want to do something because it's convenient for him. He wants to do it because it's good for someone else. And he goes out of his way to deliver a pizza in the middle of a tornado. And so Squidward is consistently discouraging SpongeBob from continuing this mission. And when they actually reach the point at which they've found what they're trying to, where they've accomplished the goal, right? They got the pizza to the guy, they're about to give it to him, and then the guy is like a huge jerk and he says, "Get out of here." You know, like he doesn't want the pizza because it didn't come with his quote unquote drink, even though he didn't order a drink. And so really what it comes down to is like, okay, obviously SpongeBob was not in the wrong. He tried to do what was right by chaotically going out of his own way to get this guy his stupid pizza. And Squidward, the entire journey, has been kind of berating SpongeBob, consistently telling him that he needs to let go of the pizza, that they should look out for themselves, that it would be better to just come back another day and deliver the pizza. And in a way, he's right. It does not make any rational sense to charge through a storm to deliver someone a pizza. But SpongeBob has an unwavering commitment. And when that commitment is repaid with rebuke that isn't like good rebuke either. It's not like the guy said, that was so reckless. Like, It would have been better if the guy said, "Don't ever do that again. Like, I don't need this that badly, dude. I don't need you to die to get me my pizza."
But it's a cartoon.
Right. Now, it's a cartoon, and so he rejects SpongeBob's offer in total, just making him cry. And when Squidward sees that SpongeBob's zealousy for his customers was repaid,
His optimism.
right, when he sees that, Squidward actually gets fed up with it, because he realizes that what he's seeing is actually from the outside looking in. He's seeing how he's been treating SpongeBob the entire journey.
Yeah.
And so he goes back to the guy, and in a chaotically good fashion, he slams the pizza in the dude's face.
Yes.
And ultimately, what you can kind of take away from that is this idea that really SpongeBob kind of impacted Squidward there. He made him do something that's not lawfully good. He made him do something that didn't require a ton of thought or planning. He just chose to do it because he saw that this kid who had an unwavering commitment was basically shunned for that. And he couldn't put up with that. He couldn't put up with how he had actually been treating SpongeBob. That's very compelling and interesting. That kind of commitment is something that chaotically good people can tend to embody, because they just can't stand looking by as someone else suffers. It's just not in their nature. And so I think that part of that is really well represented in that episode.
Yeah.
And of course, it's a cartoon, so it has to go back to fulfilling the status quo. But it's a satisfying character journey for that nice little 11 to 15 minutes you get. And like,
I remember when they first invented chocolate. sweet chocolate.
I always hated it.
You can rub it on your skin and it'll make you live forever.
Live forever, you say?
I want all of it.
Yeah, and she's like, no.
I hate you so much.
I hate you.
Oh, that was my favorite episode.
Yeah, okay, so I think that we've discussed a lot of characters, but really what we're trying to say here is, like, we just want people to understand, especially in a time like this, that it is, we're trying to encourage that we continue to do what is good. With everything that, all this craziness that's going on in the world, I think that part of what, I don't know, the director Sam Raimi, he said that these are very dark times, and it's often in these times that we look to the stories of heroes and of optimists to give us hope and to help us persevere. And while I'm not one who thinks that idolizing fictitious characters is a good thing, I do think that, okay.
That's my specialty.
I don't think that it's good for us to look at characters like gods. That's not, I don't think that's okay. But no. I do really admire the amount of time and craft that an author puts into a character to make them a hopeful protagonist, to make them someone that can remind us and challenge us in what we believe in. And I think that that's a really well done thing that we've been discussing. And so on our next channel, next episode. Yeah, we're starting a new channel.
It's a little bit too soon to start another new channel.
Yeah. We're going to be starting a new channel for every podcast episode, guys. I hope you don't get motion sickness. So, like, really, for our next episode, we will be discussing the nature of neutral good. But I think that for that one in particular, we might want to use a character that's a little less black and white and a little more gray, because I honestly found a really good character. I don't like him as a character. He's actually what I would define as just really bad. But a lot of people consider him to be a neutrally good character because his reasoning behind doing what he does is very strange and very far gone in a way. And I think that he's going to be a good representation for what we want to do. We will be, so basically for our next episode, we'll be trying to discuss like the Punisher, a Marvel Comics quote unquote anti-hero. because when we delve into his philosophy and we look at what he does, I promise you guys, you're really
I'm gonna try to watch The Punisher then, like today. Is it
I
like
wouldn't,
a movie or nothing on Netflix?
it's a Netflix show, but I wouldn't. Okay, that particular example of the Punisher is more like he's more of a typical anti-hero where he retains a shred of goodness.
Don't talk about him too much.
Yeah, but the comic book Frank Castle, the comic book Punisher that we will discuss in our next episode, I cannot stress this is not a subject that is like, he's not a hero. And we're going to discuss two characters. We will discuss the Punisher, and we will also discuss, it'll also be an anti-hero, the Wolverine, Logan.
We're also likely going to talk about other people because I'm going to gather some folks too.
Yeah, so, and hopefully on that one, Shane will join us.
Mm-hmm.
But, for now, that's going to be a wrap for this one, and we'll see you guys in our next episode.
Bye, and remember, screw the rules and just do what's right.
Yes.
I'm going to try to find a quote that fits every alignment from now on, and I'm going to say it at the end of the...
All right. See you guys later.
Hasta mañana.
So that was our second episode on the Palace Podcast, and we're really glad that you joined us. Thank you guys so much again for tuning in, and I will have another drawing video out soon. I just really need to take a break and have some time to enjoy the art for myself. Simultaneously, we will be approaching those projects with a more chaotically good approach, I hope. And I think that this episode really covered that in and of itself. I definitely feel that I could have personally had a little more biblical input this time around, and I need to work on that. So please, for those of you listening that are in the Word, that are Christians, please pray for us, and please, continue to support us, help us to keep building up our channel, and to keep producing content that stays in line. Again, thank you for listening to this episode, and we'll have another one out as soon as possible. Thanks. Bye-bye.